You like that?
You know what occurred to me when I saw your before and after picture is, damn, she does sobriety as well as she did addiction.
Yeah, right? I go big or go home either way. For sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. So, would you like to do some preamble or jump straight in?
We could jump straight in.
I like it. I ended up reading half your book this morning.
Did you?
I did. And I would have finished it if only had time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And wow. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, there's so much to, goodness. I thought about so many things I want to talk to you about, and I don't know where to start, but perhaps you could do you have fresh ink?
Yeah, I was just looking at something.
This is a real honor because Jen, the whole podcast was founded on the idea of having authors who are writing their own recovery, as you probably inferred, and you're the first actual author I've been able to interview. So,
oh, cool!
Great way to start off. And what a recovery! Would right. You could you just kind of give me an overview and just give a little perspective for the listeners?
Sure. So my recovery date is May 1st, 2011, which is a lot of miracles on top of each other. You know, a lot of times people ask me like when my addiction began, and I really believe my addictive behaviors began at birth. You know, I was born to a woman in a home suffocating in their own addictions and mental illnesses. And, you know, I learned very quickly to shove my feelings down and disassociate and hide from who I was, because who I was never good enough. And that's the core of addiction, right? I mean, that's the core. No matter how it begins for us, you know, maybe our paths, you know, the logistics of our paths may be different, but all the feelings underneath that surface are so the same. You know, we're all connected in those core feelings. And so those core feelings for me, I can't remember ever not having them. And, you know, there was a lot of secrets to be kept and a lot of chaos. And then, you know, I'm sure we can get into this if you want later, but my parents joined a cult, and, you know, we moved across the country, and, you know, there in that cult, I was groomed and, you know, shown and taught that, you know, the purpose of my being alive on this earth was to give my body to anybody who asked for it. And I was searching for love. I was desperate for love. And so, you know, I soaked in whatever attention anyone would give me, you know, and I was molested until we fled that cult when I was almost 10. And, you know, I kept so many secrets and I had so much shame that, you know, it grew into what I call the beast. It grew into every pore and cell and everything about me. You know, I just was in so much darkness. And when I was around 12, I found alcohol. And I believe alcohol saved my life. I was super suicidal. And, you know, I would lay in bed at night and just literally claw at my skin to where I would wound myself, and close my eyes and just pray and wish that I could be anybody but me. I hated myself so much. And, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on in my home. My mom was always trying to kill herself, and she said it was my fault. that I disappointed her and I caused her sadness, and I wasn't allowed to talk about it, and we weren't allowed to let anyone know outside of our home. And I still had all the secrets from being molested, and all this stuff just consumed me. So when I had that first sip of alcohol, I was an alcoholic from that very moment, because in my belief, alcoholism isn't about how much we drink. It's about the obsession to drink. And although at 12 years old, I wasn't able to drink every single day, I obsessed on getting more every single day, constantly, because it was the only peace, the first peace I had ever known before.
I'm giggling because I can relate to that at 12, going to the store and buying beer and sneaking it underneath my parents' house. And
right?
Yeah, I was in a what it also has been studied as a cult, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Fascinating.
I'm just now coming to grips with the fact that there was some abuse, physical, sexual abuse, when I was in my earlier teens as well, which is why I had such a profound and visceral reaction to your book this morning. I actually carried the idea of your mother making you a secret maker, or a secret keeper, rather, I believe that's the term, to a 12-step meeting this morning, and brought it up as a topic. And as you probably can imagine, and probably have experienced, it was a powerful meeting, and some people came out with some secrets this morning, which hadn't seen the light of day, perhaps ever.
That's so good.
So
That's so good.
yeah, over here on the East Coast, you had
Oh, I love that.
already today. So
it's so important. It's so important that we talk about this stuff. A lot of people, want to keep things boxed into just the drugs or the alcohol, and I feel like that box is so small and so limiting. And I think we need to talk about everything else that brought us to our recovery from addiction, because that's really the stuff we have to heal, right? I mean, the drugs and alcohol, I was sure that was my problem when I got here.
Right.
I was fucking sure. If I could just stop sticking needles in my body, if I could just stop using, then I'll stop going to prison, and I won't be homeless anymore, and all these external things, and I'll be fixed. Right. But then when I got clean and sober, and I removed the only tools I had ever known to survive being in my own skin, I was a freaking mess. Like, I love this. I always say, but if you Google image Gollum from Lord of the Rings, do it. I dare you. You'll laugh and text me later.
Okay.
That was my early recovery picture for years in recovery, because I stayed in that box that what I need to do is just get used to not using drugs. So I'm just gonna do this, and I'm gonna stay in this box, and nothing was happening. I mean, sure, life did get better because obviously I wasn't going to prison anymore. I did gather my health was getting that physical health, and I wasn't eating from garbage cans anymore, and all, the stuff that we do deep in addiction. However, the pain on the inside was so unbearable that I thought, if this is recovery, I'd rather die.
Right.
Because I was just so raw. And so my healing journey began about 4 years into recovery, I would say. Wow. When I really, maybe 3 years, when I really thought, this cannot be it. This can't be it. I can't live like this. I would rather just die than be sober, but just consumed in memories and nightmares and CPTSD and all this trauma. And I had no idea how to speak it, let alone face it. I couldn't even look at it. I just couldn't. It was so grotesque to me. It just was such a mountain that I thought there's no way I could ever climb it. Yeah,
totally the same. What changed for you after? Should we actually, maybe we should back up a little bit. I know it's kind of go like this. No, please don't apologize. It's happening just like it should. But this is I just want to say, foundationally, I feel as if the idea that okay, let me illustrate my point by saying this. The other day I was heading into a meeting, And there's this woman who's got 3 or 4, maybe she's got 5 years now. And the year is 2020, right? And she was beating herself up on the way into this meeting because we were 5 minutes late. And she said, the old timers taught me back in 1980, if you show up and you shut up and you sit down and you listen. And I said, that was 1980, huh? Well, how many years have you got now? So I guess that didn't work. You know, and in the most respectful way possible, you know, I really feel like that's a significant issue, because when I get into one of those meetings and they, you know, they say, only talk about your life as it pertains to alcohol. Well, hello.
The outside issues, right? Don't talk about the outside issues. I say fuck you, because and this is in the most respectful way, because, you know, when I did get into recovery, I did go to 12 steps saved my life. Right. I love the 12 steps. Okay.
No question.
However, I feel like people need to be in motion a little bit here. And we're kind of becoming more aware, you know, doctors, psychiatrists, as a society at whole, how much trauma is linked to addiction. And even if you didn't have childhood trauma, let's be real, addiction is a traumatic experience in itself.
In and of
it's
itself.
Traumatic to your body, it's traumatic to your life. You know, we have to heal sometimes more than just the 12 steps. And what happens with the old timers that want to just keep it like that is that you are then shaming people into not wanting to speak about what they really need to heal. And not only that, when people don't feel bright and sunshiny, like I didn't at 4 years or 3 years, we think we're doing recovery wrong.
Right.
And we're not. And so I do still go to meetings occasionally, and, you know, my whole life is recovery, but as far as like me, and I go to meetings and I share what I need to share, even if it's going to be an outside issue, because I don't believe anything is an outside issue. And what happens is what happened to you this morning, is that I get people that are broken, and they may have been in those meetings for years, and they come to me saying something they have never shared before, and thanking me for having the courage to speak about stuff that everyone in there needs to talk about. Everyone in there needs to talk about that kind of stuff. You know, we're not here to be sober. We're here to be healed, right? We're here to heal. You know, sobriety is like the first little step. And it's the most important step, because we can't heal when we're using. You know, I can't possibly heal from stuff I'm numb from. Right. So it is crucial. But I'm not here just to be sober. I'm here to be healing and growing and being a new woman, and being a voice for people who don't have one, and speaking for people that have passed away, and standing up for people that are hiding in the darkness to say, hey, you know what? You're not alone. There's absolutely nothing that you could share that you are not going to find a community of people healing from that exact same thing. And if we don't talk about it, nobody knows. Nobody knows. They're just thinking that there's something wrong with them, and that they're the only ones, or they're too dirty. Yeah. You know, and feeling alone is the worst. That's worse than anything, is feeling that you are alone in something. And it just breaks my heart into a million pieces, because nobody is alone. Like, you honestly, no matter what it is that you are recovering from, I promise you there is a village of people recovering from that exact same thing that you could connect with. But if we don't talk about it, nobody knows. So somebody has to talk about it. Right?
Well, precisely. And this right now is that avenue, which comes up against that. You know, there will be people who will listen to this and say, oh, those guys, they're showing their face. You know, my last name's right there on the screen. And
the anonymity.
Yeah.
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 Hey, you know what? I don't break anyone else's anonymity, but I myself am not anonymous. I am here to spread the message of recovery. I'm not here. I would never go in a meeting and take anyone's picture. Right. You know, I get all that. I respect it. I understand it. However, some people, if nobody speaks out, then who's going to know about recovery? No one. You know, And I'm not here to say that I'm perfect because I'm in recovery. Now, if you want to talk like that, then yeah, then when you do fall, you're going to maybe give that recovery path a bad name. I'm not here to say I'm perfect. I'm here to share the struggles, the battles, the wounds, and the victories. I'm a human, you know, and as long as we share from a place of being humble like that, I don't think there's any way breaking the anonymity of recovery is going to be a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. Speaking of breaking anonymity,
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a compliment because, as you know, I'm like halfway through your book, and I don't know where your parents are, what their status is, but the way in which you were able to communicate those issues around your mom and your father, and to do so being honest yet and forthright, yet at the same time you found this delicate balance where you were able to honor her memory. I was really awed by that, and I want to compliment you on the way you wrote that.
Thank you. It was important to me that I'm not here to shame my parents or shame my mother. You know, I'm here to release my shame, and there's a difference. And, you know, I think it can be very damaging to survivors to say, well, they did the best they could. I think that language is very important.
Yeah.
How we word things is very important. So I speak very much about me and just myself. And I do love my parents. However, I have to love them from the safety of my boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I just can't have them bleeding all over me anymore in my life, you know?
That's
Yeah. I mean, they're just, you know, consumed with addiction and unresolved trauma and mental health issues. And, you know, when people are wounded, they just bleed all over everyone around them. And we have the power to heal our lives, you know, and when we get into recovery, it's like that choice to heal is restored. And so there's just so much out there to heal our lives. I do so much. My toolbox is gigantic, you know, and I think everyone should really branch out to anything, and everyone should respect whatever it is, you know, just because you're in 12 steps or smart recovery or celebrate recovery or refuge recovery, whatever it happens to be, doesn't mean you can't go to EMDR therapy, or doesn't mean you can't do yoga or trauma-informed meditation or, you know, whatever it is, you know, hey, add them all in, man. The more, you know, we work on ourselves, the better life is.
Well, that's one of the things that, one of the tenets that defines being in a cult, isn't it? Is where you say, this is the only way you can get sober.
Absolutely.
I hear it all the time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's rough, you know, and when you're raised like that, you know, it is hard to break that. It is hard to break that belief and that, you know, oppression. It's oppression. Cults are so oppressive on, you know, your human spirit and what you think you're capable of. Yeah.
All right. So I'd like to give a little bit of continuity. We can keep jumping around here. This is great. Yeah. By the way, I like your skateboard. So for the listeners.
Oh, thank you.
Jen's got some decks hanging up behind her.
Yeah.
Is that part of your past?
Present? I love that. Yeah. Present, past, present, and future. Yes.
Awesome. Now you're in California. What city are you in?
Temecula.
Okay.
By San Diego. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you, so I guess we were kind of at the jump off point. You were 12 o'clock. You were 12 years old and you started drinking, which is not a typical path for a 12-year-old.
Right. So yeah, I started drinking, and, you know, I remember it was a friend of mine. We found a bottle of vodka, and, you know, you're so naive to what can happen when you start taking drugs, and alcohol is a drug, period. Right. So you're so naive. And this is what is so frightening about children that, you know, mess around with drugs and alcohol, is that, you know, you don't even know what the hell you're doing. And I took that, I drank that little tiny drink, and I remember we passed out and she woke up sick. We both woke up sick, and she was like, like, that was horrible. And I'm like, where's the bottle? Like, I never want to not feel that again, and I did my best to get, alcohol at any opportunity I could. And, then start smoking weed. And, the thing is with me is that I never drank or used to party. I drank and used to survive. So the kids that were just, throwing keggers on the weekend and stuff, that wasn't enough for me, So I started seeking out the kids that were using heavier drugs and actually in actual addictions and using all day and every day. And so I dropped out of high school, was, using meth. I ran away from home. It was really bad, really, really a hard point at my house, with my mom. My mom also has eating disorders, and they would put stomach tubes in the hospital. She would rip them out. And I went in there and visited her, and she was handcuffed to the bed to keep her from ripping her own stomach tube out. And she looked like a skeleton. And I just thought, my own mommy doesn't want to live for me. No one talked to me about anything about mental health issues, or that, I had no idea, and that's something that's important, that we talk to our kids about stuff. No one sat me down and said, honey, listen, this is what's going on with your mom, or, it's not your fault, or whatever, so I could have processed a lot of that. But instead I was left to process it alone. All I could think was that there was something wrong with her, because there was something wrong with me. I was damaged, and I wasn't a good enough daughter. And I ran away from home. And I lived in a flop house with other men and other runaway girls. And you could just imagine what happened there, and that's the thing also with children that have been sexually abused as children. Right. We grow up and we tend to get abused further. And it's not because there's something wrong with us. It's because that's the only love we've ever been shown a lot of times. And so we seek out people like that. And here I was in an apartment full of pedophiles. Really, these were all grown men, right, who were feeding these young runaway girls drugs. I was raped there. I saw other girls raped there. The police ended up coming and raiding that place, busting the doors down. I don't believe the men ever got anything having to do with us girls. I was never brought to court for anything. The system failed me a lot. I have to say, but it is what it is.
That's an interesting, which has to do with the idea that law enforcement and a lot of these agencies that are supposed to be protecting people. I think it was well said in a Netflix special I watched the other night, where the cops' perspective was, well, they kind of deserved it because they're up to no good. Right. That's another thing I battle against, probably.
Oh, for sure. Especially when we've been in the system, we really, it's an ugly situation in the system. Not everyone, but the majority. It's stigma is like implanted into our policies. Right. It's so deep. So yeah, even as a child, nobody ever questioned, I don't believe, my dad, like, about the home life my brother and I were living in. All the times the police were there for my mom. When I was taken in that apartment, now I didn't say I was raped, of course, because I'm a great secret keeper. Oh. We just hold that stuff in, right? But still, there was no one ever questioned me about these grown men and these young girls. But so, I went to juvenile hall a little bit, and then I kind of cleaned up for a year or two. I managed to go to get my diploma through an alternative school. Okay. And then I was just a full-blown alcoholic, and that was okay, because I was, 20, 19, it was like cute. And, that's what girls do. We go to the bars and we get wasted, and, we look good, and that's what we do, and I was suffering. I was just suffering. I was I was looking for love, looking for someone to fix me, you know, and thinking if I found the right guy that I would be fixed, and just, you know, a mess, an absolute mess. And when I was in my early 20s, about, I don't know, 22 maybe, I had to have a wisdom tooth pulled, and they gave me a Vicodin.
Ah.
And it was just like that moment when I had my first drink. It was like, relief. Opiates just relieved me more. I mean, it was like opiates. I say it like this. It was like an invitation, a warm, glowing invitation to a world I'd always wanted. You know, a warm blanket on my cold body. Just everything felt right.
Yeah.
And I had every single wisdom tooth pulled one at a time for those bottles. I had every single, and I found a dentist that was free. And it wasn't like it is now, you know, with the opiate, you know, epidemic. Everyone's kind of becoming more aware. The doctors are getting sued, so they're like legit scared.
Yeah.
You know, I got, you know, 30 Vicodin for filling each time. So I got each tooth pulled. I had knee shots, you know, you could find something wrong with you. A doctor shopped, an ER hopped, until, you know, my addiction just grew and grew. And I found someone. I mean, it's amazing who you find, right? The guy that was detailing my car, he sold Norcos, you know, I just started buying them on the street. And eventually, you know, I could not keep my job. Obviously, I was a hairstylist. I lost everything, and I lost my apartment. I was homeless.
Wow.
From prescription, 24. So it happened pretty quick, you know?
Yeah.
Prescription drugs and alcohol, I was homeless straight up. You know, people assume you only become homeless when you're, you know, an IV drug user, but that is false. You know, that is not always the case. So I started buying, you know, oxys, and I remember I was staying at this, you know, guy's apartment. He was dealing meth, and I wasn't into meth again yet. Yet. And I was really dope sick. I had no more pills. I was so sick. And unless you know, it's indescribable what dope sickness is like. But I was so sick and so desperate. And he said he had a guy coming over, and I assumed the guy had pills. So, you know, and the guy showed up with heroin and a needle. And at that point, I'm so sick and desperate that you could have told me anything and I would have taken it to get better. And B, I had no self-worth. I did not care about myself one single bit. And I just put my arm out, you know? And from that moment on, I was an IV heroin user, and I ended up using meth in the spoon together. And I did that for almost 15 years. Daily, to where I was there was a good year I was walking the streets in a psychosis and talking to myself. I don't know what was real, even to this day. Eating from garbage cans, using McDonald's bathroom toilet water to shoot up with, you know, all of it, you know, like a movie. That was me, in and out of jail more times than I could count, you know. I was always hiding. I couldn't even stand to look at myself. You know, I had abscesses all over. I was losing my teeth. You know, I had infections constantly, just, you know, so sick. And I just, you know, I didn't want to die. I just didn't care if I did die. You know, I think there's a difference. I wasn't on a death mission, but I didn't care. I mean, if I died or not, you know. And you know, I used to live under this bridge, and I live in the same town that I did all this in, which is amazing. Yeah. So I pass this bridge I'm going to talk about every single week when I take my kids grocery shopping. So I used to live under this bridge, and I used to sell heroin under there, and, you know, by myself.
No pistol.
And you know, thinking I'm a badass, you know. And that's the thing, you know, I always wanted to be so tough. And I surrounded myself with the worst of the worst of the worst. You know, I used to smuggle guns across the border. I hung out with guys that did not speak English, and I pretend I could speak Spanish and I couldn't understand shit, but I would pretend, I'd pick up a few words that was just so, I had a guy put a knife to my throat and try to kidnap me. Another guy stabbed my fiance 31 times and left him in the hills.
That's not this one? No.
Yeah, no, not this one. My
Okay.
fiance, it was back then, so yeah, I put myself in bad situations, and so proving I was tough, proving that no one was going to ever be able to hurt me like they did when I was a little girl. But people were constantly hurting me, so I was living under this bridge selling drugs, and these two guys came up and they wanted to buy heroin from me, and they ended up, of course, jumping me for my money and my drugs. They raped me under that bridge. And I'm telling you, the most monumental part about that is I remember getting up and I had sand in my mouth and just disheveled. All my dignity ripped from me, whatever dignity I had left. No money, no drugs. And all I thought was, that's what I get. That is what I get. I deserved it. And carry on. And just carry on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I was in and out of jail. And I have mixed feelings about jail, because a lot of times I went to jail just for under the influence or personal possession. I think that's fucking bullshit. But at the same time,
I have mixed feelings about that.
Yeah, it's mixed for me. I feel that, and the laws have actually changed, which we can talk about later. But, back then the laws were, even a simple possession, no matter what amount, was a felony.
Yeah.
So I started racking up the felonies, and eventually I was sent to prison. And I remember, the day that they sentenced me to prison. They in the shackles and the waist chains, and I could still smell the heroin in my skin.
Ooh.
And I was, my head was down, and I was sitting there, I was sitting the benches in our county clothes.
Yeah.
And I could hear the DAs and the public defenders and everybody kind of just quietly chit-chatting about their weekends and their kids and their lives and giggling. And I could smell perfume, and I could hear the jangling of their bracelets.
Right.
And I remember thinking and feeling that life was never possible for someone like me. I just felt so disconnected to life, period. So they eventually got sick of me and sentenced me to prison. And when I got to prison, I did the same things that I did on the streets. I started smuggling tobacco, and that was like my get down, and so for the first year or so, I was just living the same way, that I did. I just tough fighting. And then about a year into my sentence, I had, a moment of what I call divine intervention. I don't know what it was, but all the sound just left the room. I was looking out the little window, in my cell, and at that small patch of grass that we all used to walk around and talk about lives that none of us had ever even lived, just glorifying shit that wasn't even real. And all the sound left the room, and a sensation came over my body, and it just finally hit me that this was going to be the sum total of my life until my addiction took my life away, if I didn't do something. And, I say a teeny tiny spark was ignited that finally believed a little bit that I didn't want to die like that I didn't want to overdose in some riverbed as a transient whose identification was pending.
Right.
That was the truth. Yeah. That was my reality, my absolute reality. And I'm shocked that it didn't happen.
Yeah. That's one of the most overwhelming feelings for me.
Yeah. It's amazing that we survive and then even further to survive and be thriving today. It's just, I mean, it shocks me, and it's a miracle that anybody, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind that anybody, we shut the door. It blows my mind that anybody even chooses recovery. Like, it's a mind blowing to me. I'm so inspired by people that have like one day or no days, like, wow, like what, it's just amazing to me. Cause I remember I didn't even know what I was fighting for in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be this, and who could have known?
I mean, I did a post today on Instagram, and I said, I had no idea that this tiny spark would light this, enormous raging fire.
Ooh, with pink smoke everywhere, billowing.
Pink's right. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, for me, the idea of knowing the hell that I've known, and obviously you've been right alongside with me in that, is, and it's the only way I could know heaven as the one that I'm living in this moment.
True that.
Yeah.
People, quote unquote regular people, they don't, I think they take this stuff for granted. And, I still, at almost 9 years, I wake up and I am grateful to have water, clean water. I'm grateful to have a toothbrush and toothpaste, and, everybody in my house is healthy, and I have a house, and I don't have to be afraid anymore. I don't have to put myself at risk anymore. I don't wake up wondering if all my shit's gone,
Yeah.
And that's was my existence for so long, that that was my existence longer than this has been.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you use that term, at risk. I think the risk on the negative side is probably the reason that people like you end up becoming willing. See, I know for me, when this morning, when this guy at 50 years old said he was raped or sexually molested from age 6 to 11 or 6 to 10 years old, he shared that with the room. Like, it took me back to when I could first begin to conceptualize the risk involved in sharing that with another human being. After decades of saying, I'm going to die with these secrets, to being able to verbalize them. Goodness, I mean, I can tell you have something to say on that.
Yeah, no, I feel what you're saying. Totally. It is so scary. And there's so much power in speaking your truth, but I think even more than that, there's so much power in learning to sit with it and learning to really look at it yourself. Because for me, I couldn't even look at it. Not for what it really was, and especially with my family stuff, it's very hard to come to terms and accept that my family did not love me the way that a family should love a child. And then how do you move forward from that?
I can tell you've really sat with it based on how you wrote about what parts are your responsibility and what parts are not your responsibility. That seems really key to your success today.
It is key, because I think that, and that ownership of what happened to me as a child was probably the last thing that I've had to let go. The last thing I've had to really learn to let go is that there is absolutely nothing that my 5-year-old body could have said, done, implicated, whatever, to have a grown man molest me like that. And there's nothing that I could have done or not done that would cause my mom to want to kill herself. And it's a huge weight that I've carried for a very long time. And I still would try. And there are even times today that, occasionally I'll catch myself taking back a little more of that ownership and wanting to see my part in stuff. And it's important to see our parts in stuff as adults. But when we are children, there is nothing that we need to take ownership of at all. And that is very huge to learn that. And it takes sometimes a lifetime. And that's okay. This journey is a lifetime journey. So.
And hopefully a long one. I remember there was a moment in prison where I read in a book that until we forgive our parents absolutely for everything they've ever done, we cannot become adults.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, forgiveness has a lot of layers to it. And yeah, forgiveness has a lot of layers, and I never encourage anyone to forgive until or if or when they are ready. And, you know, I have found a lot of forgiveness from my family, a lot of understanding, but forgiveness does not have to mean re-entry into my life either. Cool. So sometimes, you know, we assume that if we forgive somebody, that is going to mean all the pain goes away, and it doesn't. Right. Or if we forgive somebody, that means we have to then invite them back into our space, and we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Although it's a natural thing, right? Let's come on back into some more punishment.
Yeah, I've done that a million times. Yeah.
So going back to this moment, this divine intervention, and by the way, you seem to have conceptualized God fairly well, given that the cult had given you quite a good reason to essentially eliminate him from your life entirely.
Yeah, I very true. I don't know how, I have no answer for that, how that happened. But somehow, thank God, I've been able to separate what happened to me was done by man, and that was not of God at all. And what they painted to me as God is not the God I have today, because the God they painted was a punishing God, and, you know, just very ugly, very mean, a lot of pain. And so I don't see God like that today. So yeah, you know, I'm super spiritual, less religious, but super spiritual. Yeah. Thank goodness. Yeah. Makes it easier.
Man. So you're in the cell, you're looking out the window, you're looking at the grass. What thoughts are going through your mind?
Just that, you know, I finally just, you know, felt like maybe there's more for me, like that maybe there's a little bit more that I'm worthy of having than just a locker full of soup. You know, that's, you know, I was balling with my locker full of chips and soups and my rolled cigarettes, like, you know.
For those of you who don't know, being in prison means pursuing different sort of financial goals. We ramen noodles is a hot number. Yeah, cigarettes are always a big deal. Now, do they allow cigarettes in? I mean, maybe that was why you're smuggling tobacco, right?
There was no cigarettes. So I got a job, okay, in prison, that I was a forklift operator. I know. Wait, just paint this picture. Me with my, yeah. So I was a forklift operator for the recycling plant part. So I would drive the forklift around and gather all the dumpsters, basically.
Okay.
But and then take it back to the shop, which was right outside the prison gates. Being that I didn't have any violent crimes, I was able to get that job.
Nice.
So I was right outside the gates, was like the big work area, and we would get on top of the back of a truck and hand sort trash. So one of the dumpsters was at visiting. So what happened is, the criminal mind wanders, right? So people would have their people throw away tobacco, drugs, whatever, in the dumpster. It wrapped up in a certain package. I would know what to look for. I would put it on my forklift, drive it back to the thing, sort everything out, stash it somewhere, and then slowly bring it back across the gates, because they very rarely would search us, but it was a risk every time. You never knew.
Right.
Sometimes I'd go in there and I'd have tobacco in my socks, rolled up, everywhere, and there's, that was so risky, because at any point, one of those people could have said, we dropped it off. and maybe it wasn't there when I went there, but they could say they dropped it. I could have got killed for that. They would have been like, our people said it's there. You fucking owe us.
Right.
And when you owe someone in prison, you might as well just hang yourself. That's it. Right. So yeah, it's just, I just think about all the situation. I'm so grateful that every time someone said they dropped it off, they actually did. And, you know, everything worked out, because, man, or if I would have got busted at the gate, you know, God knows. And these were not nice people. These were lifers that would have no hesitation. They're not losing nothing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And
I had a date to go home, which makes me already, you know, a target.
Very unpopular.
Very unpopular. Yeah. It's, you know, prison is its own hell. I'm telling you, you already know, it's an alternate universe with rules that don't make any fucking sense at all. They just don't make any sense. When you get out and you start living like a real life with real people, it's like amazing to me. And I think about these women that are still there right now, that have been there since I was in high school, or, you know, and I just think, my God, they're just still doing that same routine. And, you know, I don't know what it was like for you, but at least for us, everything was absolutely thrived on routine. Everything had to be the exact same. And if the doors didn't open exactly when they open, everybody was in an uproar. If there was a new guy on, everyone was in uproar. I mean, any little thing throws these women off. That's the only way they survive, is just to get through the next system, the next schedule.
Precisely.
And I just think, man, they're still living that way. God, it breaks my heart, because there's a lot of people there, you know, not to get into too much politics and stuff like that, but there's a lot of women there on the 3 strikes law that are there for stealing bicycles. And a lot of their crimes are just all drug related. I mean, I always say this, that 90% of them there are drug related. The 10% that aren't, those are the real dangerous ones. And those are the ones that are really dangerous.
That's the statistics in a lot of other countries. They have 10% of the you know, of the percent that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, the ones that are, you know, killing people and doing this stuff sober, those are the ones that make me nervous. You know, those are the ones that I stay away from. But, you know, all these women that have done horrific crimes, some are not horrific and they're still in there, you know, and they're just caught up in their addictions. You know, it doesn't make it okay, but it explains a lot to me, you know. I'm grateful that I went to prison, what I went to prison for, and not what I should have gone to prison for. Let's just put it that way.
Whew, yeah. So after that day, did anything change outside of your mind? How did that progress? How did you start moving to where you are today?
So really, ultimately, again, the only thing I thought was my problem was drugs and alcohol. So from that day, I did not buy any more pills or drink any more hooch.
No kidding.
Yeah, that was it. I just, from that day, and I have to be fair that, you know, yeah, there was drugs in the prison, but they were a lot more few and far in between. Right, so although I was using as regularly as possible, I was not strung out, you know, like so it was a little bit, quote unquote, easier to make that physical choice. I was not in like major withdrawals and stuff. Had I been on the street using like I use on the street, yeah, I couldn't have just been like, from that day, I just didn't use. But, you know, being in prison, you know, and just, I don't know about other prisons, but in that particular prison, especially being a women's prison, because now this is interesting. So men's prison get a lot of drugs from visitors. Women will do anything. We'll bring you all your shit. We'll shove it all up everywhere and bring it to visiting and risk our whole entire future, you know? When women get to prison, the men disappear.
I never thought about that.
Okay. Men get taken care of in prison by their women.
Oh,
women come to prison and their men disappear and find somebody else. So women are oftentimes left alone. So we are forced to rely on either a crooked cop, which happens a lot, to bring in our stuff, or the random few, that we could find. So it's not as plentiful in there, the drugs, because we got to get them from somewhere.
That totally makes sense.
So yeah, the men's prison, I think, has a lot more, because we as women, we take care of our men when they go to prison.
That was my experience. My mom visited me 3 times over the 6 years I was in Thailand. And my dad, he wrote lots of letters, but he never showed up, never offered any support.
It's just, the way that women are, we are nurturing,
yeah.
and we, and especially women that are caught up in that cycle of, with the gangster life or the prison life, or, drug life, we're just so enabling. And so, yeah, they get a lot of stuff from the women. And so the women's prison, we rely on the few crooked COs, to bring us our stuff. Or like I said, the few random outside people that show up for women. It's just so I was using and drinking as much as, we could make it before it got taken or stolen, but it wasn't as much as, I wasn't like strung out, like I said. So the decision physically to make was easier, but I was still smuggling tobacco till the day I paroled. I was still fighting and acting tough. I didn't deal with a single thing, nothing.
Yeah.
I just didn't drink and use. That was it. But hey, that's what a recovery date is. So there's my recovery date. It's interesting because, yeah, that's my sobriety date, but recovery is really much more important to me than sobriety. So
the idea there that prison slowed you down in terms of using, that's a good jump off point to mention harm reduction. That's been a conversation I've been having a lot lately with a lot of these people, and coming back again to going into 12-step meetings and people being drunk in a meeting. Watching those guys get thrown out of meetings is heartbreaking for me, or watching them get chastised because they come and pick up a white chip every day, or just the whole idea. Like, it took me a full 2 years of staying in and out of the rooms to come to the point where I didn't have to keep going back out. And harm reduction is that's a big shift we need to make, I think.
For sure. It's, I'll be honest, when I first, paroled and I came home and I went straight to my NA and AA meetings, I was very 12-step or die. It's like, you got to do it this way or you're going to fucking die. Don't you dare veer out. Don't you dare. If anyone said they were
don't
leaving
have your
AA
own recovery.
Yeah. If anyone said they were leaving AA or NA to go to, church or whatever it was, I'm like, you're going to die. You're going to die.
Yeah.
If somebody came in taking Suboxone, I didn't want them to speak. You can't speak. You can't share. You're not considered in recovery. And I did a lot of things that I regret. And I did a lot of that behavior that you're talking about, where people are, it's so, you're going to kill people like that. And the thing for me is that recovery really ultimately is anything anybody's doing to love themselves a little bit more than the day before. That's it. That's all. If Suboxone or a needle exchange or whatever the hell it is helping you love yourself a little bit more than the day before, what happens is that shit grows. That shit grows in somebody. And it does, it may not change the path they're on forever. It may not immediately.
Right.
But what it is going to do is it's going to be something that it plants a seed and it stays with them forever. And I'm not here to force people to get sober. I'm here to show people that they're worthy of life no matter what they're doing, period. That's it.
Preach.
And unfortunately, a lot of the 12-step meetings and other meetings, the only goal is that people get sober and do it one way. And I think that is just horrible. And, I think that great, I'm really, if a meeting is like that, find another fucking meeting, because there are meetings that are, filled with more open-minded people, you know, and there is other paths to recovery, and, you know, AA is not the only way. And, you know, no way is there's just so many ways, but yeah, it's harm reduction is huge. And I'm constantly in motion with harm reduction. So my harm reduction belief first started with, like you said, like Suboxone, like medication assisted recovery. That's where it started.
Yep.
But it's blooming into needle exchanges and test kits and helping people who use drugs to love themselves a little bit more, because I am no better. You know, I am no better than they are. You know, and they are no less than I am today. They just don't know it. They just don't know it. They've forgotten, or they've never known, you know, and so they deserve health care, period. So that's where harm reduction, it really expands, you know, or it has expanded for me.
That's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the listeners can't hear me nodding all the way through everything I said vigorously and energetically. But yeah, that to me, that's, yeah. If anybody out there listening, you know, if you might never make it completely off of drugs, and maybe that's your path, maybe it's not, but please try to find people who will be tolerant and understanding of where you're at and meet you where you're at.
Go where the love is. Go where the love is. And I promise you, just like we were saying earlier, if no one talks about it, nobody knows. So I'm going to talk about it because I want everyone to know that there is huge communities of people that are actively supporting and fighting for for harm reduction and for medication assisted recovery. And I love abstinence. I love it. I love being sober. And I would love for everyone to someday get to a point where they don't need to take any more methadone or Suboxone or whatever. But until, and, or if, when, whatever, I love you just the way that you are, and you're deserving of healthcare. It's about healthcare. It's about people are dying out there, left and right, that are not even quote unquote junkies. These are people that have just used a few times and they're dropping dead, period. Like, it's horrible. It's just horrible. Nobody needs to die. And if someone comes in a meeting that's drunk, for whatever reason they're there, celebrate and love the shit out of them, because they just don't feel it, you know, or they come in on Suboxone. Amen, dude. Suboxone is not getting low. It's not, you know, they're doing something. The effort it takes to just take Suboxone is huge. It's huge. It should be celebrated. They have something to say. They have something that can teach us.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the giants I know today were on Suboxone for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
They were still embraced in the right places. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I mean, it's sad. There's a lot of stigma in recovery.
Well, I think for people like us, fear is playing a big part, because, you know, they're scared that if drunk people come in there that they're gonna relapse. And I'm not even sure what that's all about. Maybe their recovery is not founded on the right principles or a solid foundation.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that our job is not to judge people, or, you know, even what worked for me is not going to work for everybody else. You know, we just share our truth, and we just do, you know, we show the way that we did it, and we, you know, just love people wherever they're at. Period. Yeah. That should be the main focus of any type of addiction treatment, is just to do our best to help people love themselves a little bit more than they did the day before.
When I think back to getting out of prison, and when I came out, I was escorted out the front door of the Los Angeles Federal Penitentiary, and out onto this beautiful, I love California, onto this beautiful sunny day, which ironically, at that point, in contrast to how I had gone into prison, at that point in California, it was illegal to smoke a cigarette. But when I got to the Greyhound bus station 8 blocks away, everyone was outside smoking marijuana. And I was told I couldn't let it in my Newport. But
Yeah.
but when I got on that bus, I rode 4 days across the country, all the way to Columbia, South Carolina. And after having spent the previous 6 years building myself up and living this prison lifestyle and working, to build a reputation and create a life for myself, I came home and I still had that charisma and that courage and that bravery and all that energy, and it all just collapsed on me in a moment when I walked outside the first day after arriving and realized I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody. I had no contacts. I had no resources, and I was starting at literal ground zero. Like, that was incredibly difficult to deal with, and then to try and get started again and find momentum. Like, how did that go for you?
Oh yeah, I feel that 100% totally. And that's why people go back to prison. That's why people just cycle back, because here we are completely dehumanized and learn to exist and survive in a jungle, and then
Sure.
then we get released. In California, at least, we're released with $200 $200 cash. And what's funny or not funny is that at the bus stop, there's the drug dealers are waiting there, because they know that everybody's just released from prison with $200. And a lot of women relapse within the first 20 minutes of getting out, and it's like the chum in the water, man, for the sharks. It's like, here these people are, they've been locked up, guaranteed, especially if they're getting released, they had short terms, so that they're there for drugs for sure. And so we're all just going to wait there for them to show up with their $200 cash. And I saw so many women relapse within that first 20 minutes and not even get back on that bus to go home. And who knows what happened? Who knows where they went? Homeless, whatever. And yeah, so I got home and I had nothing. I had nothing, and I didn't know how to exist in this world. First of all, my existence outside of prison up to that point was homeless and criminal, Yep. And then I learned how to exist in prison, which is not reality. And then I got home and I felt so lost, and none of the cool stuff about me was cool out here. Like, what the hell? And all my gangster and all my badass didn't fly, and I remember I tried to go into a CVS for something, and the manager recognized me, and he said, "You need to leave right now. You're not allowed in this store." And it just hit me that, fuck, man, I really messed things up for myself, like, so yeah, it was a long haul. It really was. And that's one thing I really love about, like, the fellowship, whatever fellowship that is that had I not gone back there, I would have felt so alien. I guarantee you I would have been back on the streets, with fast. But it's like, you walk in to these recovery meetings, and I'll just leave it blank because there's so many different avenues. You walk into a recovery meeting, and it's like, there's your people.
Yes. Yep.
Right? There's your people, and they all, or most, we get it. We all get it, and you don't have to pretend to be somebody else, or, they're just, it's so important, that community is so important, to feel like you're not alone, so I just, man, I hung on to them like for dear life. I used to just watch people on how they behaved, and I kind of picked up pieces here and there and took them home with me, and just, I kind of learned, it's like a baby learning how to do stuff. I was a baby in this world for sure.
Yeah.
And I just learn, and I'm still like that. I still watch people that I admire, or, I see something about them that's, real spiritual or peace, or, They're super strong boys. And I watch what they do, and I pick pieces out here and there, and I bring them home with me as I'm building this woman that I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I remember, I mean, I didn't go to CVS like that, but when I remember trying to get a minimum wage job, and
Oh yeah.
just couldn't do it. You know, that I was a felon, and couldn't get a job for $7.50 an hour. I was just thought, you know, how am I going to make it?
And drugs, you make so much more money. I mean, it's, you know, when we sell drugs and stuff, it's very relative, because we make a lot and then we lose a lot, you know, and that's kind of the appeal to it. You know, I think that's why people in recovery from addiction make such great entrepreneurs, because we know, and we actually like that bottom to the top. We love that
Those wild
hustle.
swings.
You know, we love it. We love that hustle, you know, and so we actually make amazing entrepreneurs once we get our lives together. I mean, I see very, very successful people, and, you know, starting their own businesses, their own ventures, and they use that tenacity that they had on the streets to hustle for something good. You know, and I think people in recovery just have the, you know, capabilities of being so successful. It's like that drive and that hustle it can be used in a good way. So listen to this. So I've been a felon since I was 18. Okay.
Yep.
Which comes, as you know, with all kinds of shit. You know, especially now that I'm a mother,
Right.
I'm not able to teacher's aid in my son's class.
Right.
I'm not able to go on field trips unless I drive separate. I cannot be have anybody else's children under my care. And let me tell you, all my charges are drug and theft.
Right.
Shit. No violence, no child.
Right.
I had no children in my you know, nothing.
Yep.
But it's felony, period. So I had a buttload of felonies. So I'm a felon. That's it. So I'm always, it didn't bother me so much until, you know, my son got into school age, and he asked me, why, Mommy, can you come be the, teachers in this class mom? And I thought, fuck, I can't, I'm not allowed. And I thought, you know, this really sucks. There's something that has to change. So I started looking into the laws, and watching the laws and seeing, you know, because the laws are always changing in every state. And so just this last year, the laws changed again, and all my felonies became eligible to be reduced to misdemeanors. Yeah. So I called an attorney, and I laid it all out for her. And I said, this is my truth. This is where I was at. This is what I did. This is what I've done today.
Yeah.
I published a book. I speak all across the country. I've had my story published across the world.
Yeah.
You know, I speak about child abuse, sexual abuse, addiction. I have, you know, at that point I had just barely 8 years. She said, I think we absolutely have a case. So we got everything together.
Right.
We went into the same courtroom, and the same judge that sentenced me to prison over a decade ago. And I walked into this courtroom with my head up, free from more than just shackles, but just free in so many ways.
I hope you had a few bracelets on your jingle.
Yeah, right? I had perfume.
Perfume.
I was wearing perfume, you know. I did not feel like an animal. I felt like a human being.
Oh,
and I walked in, and we presented 18 or 22 motions with a few that were already misdemeanors to the judge to be reduced to misdemeanors. And then he let me I shared a testimony with him and the whole courtroom. And I just told him the story of how I used to feel coming in there, listening, you know, with my head down. And I said, but today I walked through the front door as a free woman. And no matter what you decide today, you know, I will never forget this experience. It was very moving. And he had to take his glasses off. He was like wiping his eyes. The clerks were clapping.
wow.
And he said, young lady, I am not only going to grant you everything you're asking for, I'm also going to expunge your entire record.
Holy shit.
So I am the only person that my attorney has ever represented or knows of that has been to prison and paroled. And actually today I have it's in the paperwork still, but I will have no record at all. That is the miracle of recovery. That is the power of what can happen when we stand up and take our lives back from all the shit that used to drown us. It is possible for everybody, you know.
That's incredible. That's an amazing.
It's just, when my attorney messaged me and she said, I just want you to know the DA has already sent me a pre-approval on all your motions. So I think we have nothing to worry about. And by the way, it's the same judge that sentenced you to prison. I just thought, oh, it's God. It's my higher power. I mean, there's just, clearly. I mean, it's been a decade, you know, and I happen to be in that same room, you know, with that same judge, and just, I mean, so many things come together when we just start to believe in ourselves and do the right thing and do what we got to do and walk through that pain. That it's just amazing.
Yeah. And there's another person that's underneath that same bridge right now who may follow your footsteps through the courtroom twice in the next decade. Yep. And I hope that us talking about this can make that happen a little bit faster. A decade ago, to think that something that the story you just shared would happen in this country, for me, was inconceivable.
Right.
Yeah, it's emotional. Just thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it is possible for, you know, the great part about recovery is that the longer we stay, the more, you know, footing we gain. And then we start to actually feel good enough about ourselves to actually start being our own advocates and start looking into things, you know. 4 years ago, I wouldn't have even attempted to look into my record. It wouldn't have been such a mountain that I just would have, I actually surrendered myself to the fact that I'd be a felon for the rest of my life. That was just part of my consequences. And that's okay. You know, I mean, it's not like the end of the world. Right. But as you know, I start to advocate for myself and my future, and I start to see that I'm worthy of whatever anybody else is capable of getting, we start to seek out these other avenues, and like we get to like walk through stuff. And yeah, it's amazing, you know, it really is. And the laws are changing all over the states, all over, about everything, especially when it comes to drugs. Drug charges are changing. Times are changing. It's not happening as fast as we'd all like, but it is changing, you know.
You know, to me, the catalyst in that story was you having children. Now, I think it was only yesterday that I was speaking to someone who was saying how they would never have children because they were an addict. And you know this story very well. I'm an addict. I don't want to raise or bring more kids into this world that have to suffer what I did. And I completely disagree with that philosophy. So how was that? I mean, you obviously, I think you have 2 children now. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. 2 children. I was terrified to have children because I thought that, you know, what happened to me as a little girl was somehow my responsibility. And what if I was a child molester? Oh. You know, there is things that happen as a result of trauma like that survivors have to work through. Some of it is nightmares where we are molesting children. There's a lot of strange feelings and a lot of stuff. And what it is, it's just trauma. It's not that there's something wrong with us. You know, we just have a lot of healing to do. But I never wanted to do anything like that to my own children. I never wanted my children to suffer. Or what if I was going to be a mother like my mother? You know, there was a lot of things that scared the shit out of me about having children, you know. And, you know, when I was pregnant with my son, I would cry a lot and just be really terrified. What if I did something to him? And what if I couldn't love him the way that he should be loved? And, you know, what if I relapse? You know, all these what ifs, you know. And I just, you know, when they laid him on my chest, I saw his little pink face. It just, everything kind of melted, and I just knew that I was not my mother, and I'm not my addiction, that I am capable of so much more than that. And I think that's important, that, you know, addiction is not an identity, it's an experience. And so, yes, there is some, you know, truth to people, you know, this, you know, genetic, whatever, disposition or whatever, but that can go with anything. And, you know, I think that I'm raising my children to know that they can come back from any mistake that they ever make. And I'm raising them to be kind to people, and not to judge people, and that, you know, the guy on the street just has pain and he's not a loser. And I think I come from a place that maybe I can raise more loving children than maybe the next person can, you know, and maybe what I'm doing is going to change the world. Maybe, you know, I do believe that breaking the cycle of pain in our past not only changes our own homes, but it's going to change the whole ripple effect down the line, where my children and my children's children and their children, and we are going to carry this on. And the more families that are doing that, that's how the world changes. That's how it doesn't change with just me changing myself. It changes with my children then growing up in a different home, and their children, their children, and their children. And yeah, I mean, yeah,
the,
I get it.
the generational sin concept has really
Yep.
been key for me, to not stop thinking about just my lifetime, and think about the things that I've stopped within my life.
It's huge. It's huge for even me. You know, I'm just doing my thing, right? I'm just doing the best I can, and I'm always trying to be a better woman, and a more healed woman. And, you know, I raised my children in a home that looks nothing like the homes I grew up in. But the truth is, the real bigger picture is that is going to spread out to my children's grandchildren and their grandchildren. And, you know, it's like the most important job we can do. And even if we don't have children, you know, you're stopping it for everybody around you. You know, it's like you can actually heal your entire community by changing and taking ownership of what you got going on. It's just amazing. You know,
the phrase, we're only as strong as our weakest link is in my mind right now.
Yeah.
Because so much of our society's actions and all these things we've been talking about with law enforcement, and how people are talked about and treated as junkies, you know, things like these little terminology twists that we can make, you know, those things, we can lift up the lowest parts, and that always has a value. It always has an impact. Gosh, so when you came out of prison, you were struggling to make it, and you eventually found your foothold and started to create the warrior goddess that you are today. What was there any time where you sort of kind of like, it seems like most of the things you're doing right now are the massive shifts that are only possible when you realize how small fear is in reality versus what it becomes in our minds. Was there any major change or major situation that helped you dominate fear or crush fear?
You know, let me think. You know, I do things afraid a lot. I still do them even though I'm afraid, because I know that they're important. And I think for me, probably, you know, I had an instance where, you know, I remember the first time I shared a little bit of my story on social media. And it was not much, but it was just a little bit. And I was terrified. I was terrified that people were going to look at me bad, that, you know, they were going to think I was dirty and damaged, and, you know, I should just keep myself painted as in this little tiny box that's more acceptable. And what happened is, I got a lot of messages from people saying, "Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing that." It was either A, exactly what I needed to hear, or B, exactly my story, or whatever it was. And I thought, maybe we don't have to hide this stuff. You know, maybe this is the stuff that actually needs to come out to help people. You know, I don't have to just share my, you know, the stuff that everybody's talking about. You know, everybody's talking about not drinking. Everybody's talking about not drinking. It's like the sober movement is big, you know, for the sober curious and not drinking alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could stick to that story. I have a very big alcohol story, and I could stick to that story because it's more popular and it's more trendy.
Maybe.
But that's not why I'm here. You know, I didn't come through all that to just make myself small again in recovery.
Mm.
You know, I'm here to share the hard stuff because it's what my purpose is. My purpose is not just to paint myself in a certain way. My purpose is to help people, you know, and if that's not your purpose, then you're not here for the right reasons, you know? So when I took that little step in that so much fear and I saw what happened, it really propelled me into thinking like, okay, let's do this. And I went big, you know? and I still sometimes do things, and I do them when I'm afraid, even though I'm afraid, because I know in my heart they're right.
Yeah.
Because I know in my heart it's the right thing to do for me, and it's the right thing to do for people. And not everybody's going to agree with you, and not everybody agrees with me. And, you know, when I share about my mother situation, my mother, I get a lot of shit from people. That's your mother, blah, 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 blah. But I also get a lot of people saying, thank you so much, in absolute pain over that, over the same situation. And those are the people I'm here for. Those are my people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have a mentor that used to say, he would say, if you haven't pissed anybody off before lunch, you're making a mistake. You're not doing
that. It's true, man. If you don't want any conflict, then it's like, you're not going to do anything of magnitude, right? I mean, there's going to be conflict when you're going against the grain. You know, but that's okay. I don't know. It's okay. It's become okay with me. It's not always easy. Right. You know, it's sometimes hurtful, you know, what people say. You know, sometimes I share my entire heart and I'll get that one or two comment that it does hurt a little bit, and you want to defend yourself and you want to explain, but I don't need to explain anymore. You know, I don't need to explain or defend why I have done what I've done, why the boundaries are there, or why I speak out about this, or, you know, defend my, you know, I had somebody say once when I was sharing about my court situation, you know, to the average person, I guess it's like, well, woohoo, you've got, you know, charges taken off because you're a criminal. Like, what kind of celebration is that? You know, and I get it. You know, I get it. But I'm not here for those people. You know, I'm not here for them. I'm here for the people that understand what I'm talking about and have lived it. And it'll be pretty hard up to find someone that hasn't been touched by that life. I mean, it's everywhere. And if it's not in your family, it's in your you know, extended family, or your neighbors, or your teachers, or your friend, you know, your kids' friends, you know, or the guy that always bags your groceries at the grocery store, you know, or your nurse, your doctor. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so people need to open their eyes and see that this is their reality. And we should not be ashamed to talk about any of it, and especially our victories over it. My God, you know.
That brings me to an interesting point. And I'm sure you might even be sick of saying this, but it's, as you know, this is still worth repeating. Just in sharing the difference between guilt and shame. I know this is one of your favorite talking points. I want to hear you, please.
Okay, so yeah, that's actually huge. You know, guilt, to me, in my opinion, guilt is feeling bad about something that you did. Shame is feeling bad about who you are, and there is a very big difference. You know, you can feel shame before you've ever done anything bad. You know, shame was a shadow over my life as a little girl, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. I was ashamed of who I was before I could spell my own name. Guilt is feeling bad about a behavior, or, maybe you feel bad about some of the crimes you've committed in addiction, or the hurt you caused your parents, or whatever it is. That's guilt. Shame is different. Shame is so much harder to overcome.
Yeah, it is.
Because I can make amends for things I've done, but I can't change who I am. So you have to learn to work on accepting who you are, and loving who you are is a lot harder than making amends for bad behavior.
I've got a close personal friend right now who's going through some issues with her mother. And I know your story resonated for her. And I just wonder, for somebody who's in that situation right now, what would you say to somebody like that that's got a tough family situation?
I think that family trauma is the absolute hardest, because we feel so guilty, and we love our parents. There's just children abused or mistreated or raised in horrible homes. We don't grow to hate our parents, we grow to hate ourselves. And so we love our families incredibly. And it's very hard when that person is supposed to be the ones that love us or nurture us or be in our lives, or, and they just can't or won't or whatever, to come to terms with that. And I think that it is a common myth sold that all women love their children. And it is absolutely not true. That is a lie. And women are human, mothers are just humans, and there are people that have trauma or, mental illnesses, addictions, alcoholism, whatever it is, that prevent them from being able to love their children the way that a mother should love their child. And there are communities of women healing from this, talking about this, and helping them. I didn't know how to be a woman. What I watched from my mother was how to hate myself.
That was a good point you made in your book, talking about your mother was the first girlfriend you had.
Yeah, she was the first. That's the first, your mother for a girl. And there's obviously, it's not that the mother-son bond is less important. They're just different. Yeah, so I just, I speak about, my experience, which is, the mother is the first woman that I looked up to tell me how to be a woman, to show me how, and all she showed me was, how to hate myself by hating herself. And she showed me how to starve myself by starving herself. And I didn't learn that I was worth anything, and so, yeah, I would just tell your friend that, she is not alone. And there are so many people out there that are healing from this. And, it is a myth that all mothers love their children. And it's not that. I think my mother loves me in some degree, but it's not enough for me anymore. It's not okay anymore, because I just can't, just because, she has things going on that make it impossible for her to, she doesn't even love herself, man. That's the truth. I grieve, and it's okay to grieve over the loss of a mother that's still alive. I grieve over her. I grieve for her. I feel so sad that this is her life, and she doesn't even know who I am. She just has no clue, and she doesn't even know who she is. And I heal myself, and I don't have any expectations, but, I just sometimes, I do talk to her occasionally on the phone.
Yeah.
And I do every once in a while. And I've gone a long time where I didn't even speak to them on the phone at all. But I did talk to her the other day, actually, and she's just so disconnected from everything. And I just tell her that I love her, and because I do, and I see her, and it's just sad to me. And I just tell her about my life a little bit, and maybe it'll rub off on her to maybe heal her own life someday, and maybe it won't. But
well, the idealist in me is pulling for you too on that one. I mean,
I have, I really, it would be amazing if one day my mother took a few steps to heal her life,
yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's very interesting talking to her because, she has Munchausen syndrome, which is super complicated, and Munchausen by proxy. And, a lot of her behaviors would be deemed criminal today, had I were a child today, But so I have to keep safe from her and my children safe from her. But she was talking to me with Munchausen. Everything's about medical illnesses. So the only way to get any kind of spark in her voice or peak in her interest is to say someone's sick.
Oh.
If someone's sick, she's on it. All of a sudden she's curious about my children, or curious about, that really fuels her. And so I hate that so much. I try not to ever talk about it because I know where it comes from. But my son coughed in the background.
No.
I know. I'm like, damn it. So he coughed in the background. I'm on the phone, It's like, oh, is he sick? Have you taken it? Maybe it goes on and on. I said, okay, Mom, I'm ready to get off the phone because it's just a fuel of her mental illness. I can't stand it. It's just traumatized my entire life, So she says, I remember all the times I took you to the hospital, and after every time I bought you something, you and Barbie's. And so my 43-year-old heart sunk to the ground because I never once owned a Barbie. And I never needed to go on those hospital trips. That was my mom's Munchausen. And it's just the reality that my mom is living in a world that is not true. And I just said, okay, Mom. And I said, okay, I love you. And I'm going to go now. And I hung up with her. And there was a time when I used to call her out on everything. And I would have said, I didn't even need to go to the hospital. Or I didn't even own a Barbie. I never did. It's like she's talking about me like a child she must have seen on TV. Not me. Yeah. Not real reality. But today I'm at a place where, I don't need to do that anymore because I don't need to prove anything to myself about the truth of my childhood. And I don't need to prove anything to her. I just need to know that this is how she is. And I love her exactly as she is, but from the safety of my boundaries. And that's it. There's nothing more or less I can do.
Well, I just echo the fact that your life is a testament to the fact that there is hope for all situations as long as we're breathing. There's so many things. I lost my mom 2 years ago. There's so many things that I'll always wonder about, and I'll never know, not in this lifetime anyways, but it can be more heartbreaking to have someone alive, I think, in certain circumstances than to have lost them. But these are the things we bear,
Right.
And it sure is easier to bear them as I am today than to maybe have a drink or let it.
Oh yeah, for sure. That makes nothing better. A drink or a drug will not make anything any better. I promise. Yeah, it just won't.
Yeah, I know that for a lot of people, myself included, when if you're listening and I hope that Jen sharing, especially that last bit, which was hard for me to hear. It just seems like if I go back to when I was actively using, the reality I was living in those times it just felt like, I was alone. We've talked about that falsehood, but we've also talked about the fact that it seems like it's utterly broken, like there's no repair. And that, to me, that's the message that I try to weave through every single episode of this, that there is hope. And even if you can't hear it, can't feel it, can't conceive of it, that's one of the great values of coming to 12-step programs and being in the room, with somebody who put down the crack pipe 20 years ago. Because when you meet the person, you can say, hey, I didn't think this was possible, and here you are doing it. That, for me, that's the greatest inspiration of all.
Right. And that's why it's so important for those people to be loving, because even somebody that's still using needs to see that person. And if we shove them out,
Right.
then they don't ever get to see the hope. They just see more hate. And like, we have such an opportunity to plant a seed.
Because if I can't stay in there, where am I going to go?
Yeah, right. For sure. If I can't be loved here, I'm sure as hell not loved anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the last stop.
It is the last stop, right? Yeah. It's so cool, because I think even when I got into recovery in 2011, even times have changed so much from then, there's just so much more out there, so many more avenues you can go, so many more communities of recovery and healing, and so many more meetings. And, there used to be maybe 2-3 different home groups, now there's so many. So if you go one that's not loving and accepting, you could find another one that's no matter how they do it, whoever, whatever the group is, we always kind of flock towards groups that we click with. So there's always like the group with a bunch of the old timer grumpy guys, right? And then you'll have the group with like the young up and comings, and whatever. There's just so many different avenues. And what's interesting to me is, when I share something that I'm sure that every old timer just wants to tape my mouth shut, and I don't care, because I'm not here for them. But occasionally, one of the most old-fashioned sticklers, the ones I'm sure want to tell me to be quiet and, find another place to share and whatever, and they'll come up to me and actually show me a respect for talking about that, and sometimes it takes somebody, talking about something to kind of break through even the old timers' beliefs. Some of them are more open to being loving, and they just never known it any other way. That's, the power of, just being afraid and doing it anyways. Just, speak about it anyways, heal anyways, recover anyways, do whatever you got to do.
Yeah. Regardless. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm often reminded of in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is those early tales where they would go to the doctor and get sedatives, and so they're actually using drugs with the alcohol, which makes it part of their story,
right?
And goodness, yeah, you're right about that, though. I definitely felt some of the silence in the room this morning when I talked about this, because it's like that you could sense there was people that really were like, oh my God, that's an issue. That was something that my mom screwed me up with. And,
right.
And I felt it. I was like, oh, this guy's talking about some mommy issues over here. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not here for that person. And it, this 50-year-old guy just popped right out. Man, he had to get that off his chest. And I know he walked out of that place. I watched him walk out about 6 inches above the ground.
That's beautiful.
He had pride, man. There was at least 50 people in the room, and
that's so great.
Owned it.
That's so great. That's what I always say, is that my story may not be for everybody, but is exactly what somebody needs to hear. And those are my somebodies. Like, that's why I share it. And it's important that we do that. And it's important that, a lot of times people that don't want to hear it, it's just because it makes them uncomfortable. And I understand that. Talking about childhood sexual abuse is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Talking about dysfunctional families and child abuse from a parent is uncomfortable. Talking about needles and rape is uncomfortable. I get it.
Always.
But it's important. And so if it makes you uncomfortable,
Good.
Good, because it's something that people are going through right this very minute. And that's what's, keeps me really going, is that to know that right now someone probably is under my bridge. And to know that right now there is some child growing up with a mommy who keeps making them sick. Or whatever, it's just, these things are not things of the past, they are things of the present.
I love the, Jordan Peterson talks about the Knights of the Round Table and everyone being equal, because that's why they have the table that's round, and they want to find the Holy Grail, so they all decide collectively that they're going to go to the darkest place in the forest to look for it. They don't know what it is, they don't know where it is, but they know it exists, this Holy Grail, so in looking to decide what to do next, I feel like that's usually the key. Wherever you're at in life, it's all about, where do you least want to go? What do you least want to do? What do you not want to look at under any bloody circumstance? That's
right.
The thing that will heal you.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to say that it's easy.
No, it's not. It's not. But the power to change our lives is held in the pain we're so desperate to avoid, for sure.
So you wrote a book.
I wrote a book. I did.
You escaped prison.
I did.
You're doing this speaking thing. You're all over social media. You got this great T-shirt, which I fell in love with. It's called Retired Blackout Artist.
I wear all the T-shirts. I got a Sober Life T-shirt on today. I wear all the T-shirts. I support all the recovery wear. I do not recover quietly. I recover out loud. Yeah, I got all the cool T-shirts. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. I wear them to pick up my son from school, and interestingly, sometimes I wear a lot of sober mom stuff.
Yeah.
And I see the moms look at me, and I don't shame people for drinking. They can do what they want. But every once in a while, mom will say, I really like your shirt. Yeah. Or I'll walk in it's the farmer's market, because I do totally normal things now, right? Like farmer's markets, and I don't steal or anything. And so I'll be walking through the farmer's market, and a guy will be like, love your shirt. And I'll know he's one of our people.
Yes.
It's great. It's great. And maybe a mom is struggling, with drinking too much wine every night, and she can't get her shit together, and she's late to drop her kids off. Those are my, maybe they need to see the Sober Mom shirt and feel like maybe that opens the door to ask a question they would never dare ask.
That's another really, really, really good point, Jen. I'm super glad you brought that up, because for fuck ups like us, it's pretty damn easy to see where we need to go based on where we've been. But I tend to forget about that massive number of individuals, males, females, housewives, CEOs, struggling with some, I don't want to say minor addictions, but they're not in the gutter, they're not under the bridge, right. But they're in pain. And then that's
for sure.
I think a lot of it has to do with not being willing or able or understanding that they can ask for help. Maybe they think their problem's not big enough.
Well, what's amazing? Yeah, I think that's totally true. When you come from the streets, right, it was clear to everybody I had a problem. I mean, clearly I had a problem. Okay, there's no question, there's no arguing. I mean, I'm talking to myself and eating dirt. Okay, so yeah, clearly I had a fucking problem. But when you're talking about people that do have a problem and they are living as if they don't have a problem and trying to pull it off and hiding it, that is even more scary to come out and say something, because they think everyone's going to look at them weird, and they go to church every Sunday and they do this and that, but they can't function without drinking at all, or they don't even know what kind of relationship they have with their husband or wife unless they're drunk. Do they even like each other sober? Who knows?
What
if it all falls apart? What if it all falls apart when you get sober? Because was it all built on alcohol? Or their kids, they can't handle their kids until they start drinking. I see moms drinking at play dates at the playground. I see it all the time.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I take my kids to my son to birthday parties, and literally within 10 minutes the moms have broken out the alcohol. And there is another way to live. There really is. And I think that is the benefit to sobriety becoming a lot more popular now. That surface sobriety, the alcoholism and stuff, I think it's important. And I think it's a bigger problem than what we know of. And you don't have to hit bottom to climb back out of it, but yeah, I think it would be probably a lot harder to ask for help when you're, not clearly in trouble.
Yeah.
Like there's that saying, a lot of people there, some people who really need help don't look like they do, or whatever there's that saying. I clearly needed help. There is no question. For many years, I clearly was a problem, so I didn't have that fear. But I could see, like if I all of a sudden now, let's just say I start drinking behind closed doors, oh my God, the fear of having to come out about that would be enormous, so I try to remember that, that's, oh yeah, it'd be much harder than when I was just on the streets and I had nowhere else to go. I mean, it's like you almost have nowhere else to go but up, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's it. The other point I like to make in the stratosphere is that people who are addicted or operating from a place of addiction, these are some of the most talented people on the planet, in my experience, because you're living a double life. You're doing something that the worst of us end up under a bridge because we can't do anything but that. But the fact that you're doing that and you're over here semi-productive in your job and semi-productively raising children, and it like to pull all that off is extraordinary. The willingness to say, hey, I could be doing all this shit 10 times better if I just eliminated this one little thing. That's the tricky part.
It is tricky. Yeah. I think, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Alcohol in itself is poisonous. It's so dangerous. There's no such thing as, a healthy consumption, really. And I think, I don't know, I'm not here to tell people whatever, but, especially when you have children, it's like, I don't want to, children don't do what we say, they do what they see. I mean, that's the truth. You could say whatever the hell you want, but what they see, and they see way more than you think they see.
Oh man.
My son the other day, so I sometimes write like, I write all the time. He always sees me journal and all that stuff. But sometimes I write positive affirmations to myself, occasionally.
Sure.
I've never talked to him about it. The other day I found a sticky note in his bathroom. It said, I am good. And he's 6, But I thought that's incredible because I've never spoken to him about it. I've never told him why I do it. But he's picked up that that's something that mommy does. And it makes mommy whatever she is. And maybe he sees me, as doing well or in a happy light. And maybe he was feeling stressed out about school or whatever it was. So he did that on his own.
Oh man. Well, you know what it is.
And I'm telling you.
I can tell you what it is. For the listeners, we're doing a video chat right now, and this woman is actually positively glowing.
Oh, thank you.
And that's one of the coolest things in my life is to find those people. And it's interesting. You find them everywhere you look, and in all walks of life. But when you run into those certain individuals who have often been from hell and back, and they've never given up trying to find the thing for which they were put on earth to do. And they overcome adversity and live into courage and face fear and move forward despite the fear. then there's a glow you can absolutely see, and it's in every mannerism, and it's in their actions, and it's in the way that they comport themselves. It just, and you've got that, and that's just an awesome way to live.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a long road, but it's been well worth it. I'm well overpaid. I am extremely overpaid for sure. Yeah. I mean, like we say sometimes in recovery that, you know, we would have shortchanged ourselves had we just received what we asked for in the beginning.
Goodness.
All I wanted was just to not stick needles in my body. All I wanted was just to not be dope sick all the time. All I wanted was to just stop going to jail and to stop having everyone look at me like I was a piece of shit, and to stop, you know, just the outside stuff. That's it. That's all I wanted. And even that seemed like a far stretch.
I'll keep sleeping under a bridge. Just give me a tent.
Yep. Right. And even that just seemed like a far stretch. Like, oh, I don't know. I'm asking for too much. And what I have received by working through all this pain and healing and all this stuff has been beyond what I ever even dreamed of. I never even dreamt of this life at all. At all. It was not what I hoped for. I had no hope for much. It's amazing. And I see it every day, and I see it in people every single day. And that's why community is important. And, you know, finding people go where the love is because, you know, I see people just glowing and living and speaking and saving and all this stuff that they're doing and where they came from. And it's like, wow, I'm inspired every single day. I'm never hard up for inspiration, ever. Ever. I'm just inspired every day. And like I said, you know, the people that are just barely coming in off the streets or are still on the streets, but, you know, maybe just asking a question like about addiction, whatever it is, those are my heroes. Those people just inspire me to tears like daily, for sure.
You know, if I was to sum up what we've talked about today, I'd probably draw a silhouette of your body, and during addiction, it's like we're focused on what's inside that silhouette, you know, and that's the selfishness and self-centeredness and victimhood. And it seems to me that day, looking out the prison window at that shitty patch of grass that we do walk all over and lie to each other about.
The yard.
The yard. We didn't even have a yard. We just had a patch of concrete.
Oh God.
But to shift the focus from self to others, and to go from selfishness to selflessness, that's the irony, you know, because when we're focused inward, it's never enough, you know, and all the self-pity and all the sorrow we can put into ourselves, I'm still feeling empty. But as soon as I shift that and start focusing on how I can help other people and what I can do for the person next door or down the street or the person that I hate, my enemy, this is the trickiest part. But as soon as I do that silhouette, you know, turns from black to light. And that's where the glow comes from, because we're sending out light. And ironically, that's what fills me. And clearly that's what's filled you with such a beautiful life, with children, with, you know, your short engagement. And, you know, I mean, I can't imagine how long your wedding is going to be. I'm sorry. Well, maybe that too, but your marriage is going to be so long, you know.
Right. Well, I figure if we stay engaged for like 20 years, then we'll end up being married a lifetime, right?
Hey, you know, you'll be beating the odds. Actually, you've already beat a lot of marriages.
I probably have beat it. I beat quite a few enough odds in my life, I think. Yeah, for sure.
I had a marriage that only lasted 4 years, so you've tripled that.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, your relationships aren't easy. Parenting is not easy. Life's not easy, you know, but it's so I learned so much. I'm still such a baby at all this.
Mm.
You know, I really am. And I hope I always feel like a baby. I mean, I hope I always feel that wonder, and like I'm so eager to learn from people. I'm so like, I'm a sponge, man. I find books and philosophies and ways of healing and stuff, and I just soak it in, and I just love it so much. It's like, so it's like the beauty, like it's like the beauty of life in general, that we don't have to be the same person we are today next year. Like we could be even more free. And that's the thing for me. It's about freedom from so much. And my freedom doesn't tap out. There's no topping off in recovery. There's no as good as it gets at all. It always gets better as long as we just keep going. It always does. So just imagine what we're going to be doing next year. I know we're supposed to stay in the 24 hours, but still I sometimes look ahead and I think, fuck, if this is how I feel right now, and if I continue on the path I'm on, I am so excited for how I'm going to feel next year.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man. I mean,
who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be, honestly, pretty amazing.
You inspired me so much with that story about the expungement. And ironically, somebody asked me about that yesterday. And I was like, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it.
Right. If no one talks about it, no one knows about it, right? So I'm talking to you that you should definitely look into your state and just see what's happening. Just see what's happening, because things are changing. All the states are different and all the crimes are different, but things are always changing. And not only that, the longer that you have in recovery, the more, apt they are to help you out, as far as your record goes or whatever. Because that record, it really does hinder a lot for people.
Yeah.
And,
I'm lucky. I think that my record actually benefited me because, going back to when I couldn't get a job, I said, shit, I'm going to have to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be. Now here's the impetus.
There you go. Right. There you go. Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, that's great.
And that turned out well for me. So
that's good. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be cool. It would be one of those moments like you had in the courtroom to be able to say, all right, maybe I wasn't a criminal all this time. Maybe I was just sick, and have that indication.
Yeah. I hope it touched someone's life in there. Like there was a few people waiting to be seen by the judge, in their county blues and their county clothes, and they're, the DAs and the public defenders, which are usually total assholes, no offense, but and the judge, and maybe they don't get to see a lot of positive. I get it. They saw me in and out of there over and over and over again, and I'm sure they see everybody in and out, and a lot of people don't come back in there as with their lives restored, so it's important that some of us do, and we share the heart of it. I didn't share about drugs. I shared about the truth of my pain, and maybe it humanized the situation a little bit for them, for the next person.
Definitely. Absolutely. And that's what it's about. Again, coming back to that silhouette. Not about you.
Not about me. And even if he hadn't granted me anything, that experience to walk, I hadn't been in the courtroom since then, to walk in there, a free woman, like as equal. I still had that little part of me from back then was inside, but I realized I can look at the deputies in the eyes, and I can look at the DAs, and I have fun weekends to talk about too today. Right. And I have expensive perfume on too today. So there, but yeah, I think it's the small things people don't realize. And that's what I'm saying about harm reduction, is that it's sometimes just those little tiny acts of kindness that make a huge difference in somebody who's suffering. I remember smelling their perfume, little tiny things that nobody even notices. Those little tiny things made me feel so separate from humanity. And so when you do those little tiny kindnesses to someone who's way down at the bottom like that, you actually bring them back to who they are a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do those things to others, but a lot of people out there can do them to themselves, because for me, that was the key. Like I was hard on you, but I was hardest on me, you know, and I told you lies, but I lied to myself, and that was killing me. And
Right.
boy, so yeah, if you're out there struggling, then find a way just to be nice to yourself. Give yourself a compliment. I mean, that for me, that was how it started. Looking myself in the mirror and saying things that I absolutely didn't believe about myself, you know, in kindness.
Right.
What a process. Jen, so what's next for you? Where are you heading next?
So let's see, I'm writing again.
Yes.
You know, I have another book or 3 in the works, in the plans.
Maybe a Netflix special that culminates with that courtroom appearance.
There, right? Yeah, geez. Yeah, who knows? So let's see. So I'm writing. I have a lot of stuff, you know, my children are little, so I have very limited writing time. But you know, I write as much as I can, and I write articles, and you know, I'm always speaking about stuff, and you know, and on lots of different platforms. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, you know. I'm not sure. And that's you know, I'm not sure. I just kind of going with it, and just like, it's really exciting for me it's a miracle that, you know, in my addiction, I lost the ability to read. I literally, when I first, you know, got clean, it took me a long time to learn how to read again. I don't know why that happened to me, but so the fact that I'm able to write a book is enormous, you know. And so I'm just kind of riding on it, and I'm just, you know, I have a lot of stuff I would like to write about, and I just kind of feel like when it's time, it'll be time to the other books to be finished. It's a big process.
Huge.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a big process to write. And I actually really prefer, to be honest, I prefer article writing. I prefer writing, you know, short pieces than I do an actual entire book, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's cool.
So if listeners, now I want to ask for the listener, I'm sure there's a few people that are going to want to get in touch with you, maybe for speaking. It could be for writing articles. You could either purchase your book. I believe that's on Amazon, right?
The book is Shape of a Woman by Jen Elizabeth on Amazon. My website should be launched this weekend, but maybe not, maybe next. I mean, I'm like not that great at all this, but
let's do it.
Yes, this weekend. It will also be able to be purchased, the ebook, on my website when it's up. And everything I'm under the sun for me is resurrection of me. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, my website, everything is resurrection with a K _ me. Yeah, everywhere.
And so if you want to see someone who's absolutely glowing in recovery, follow Jen on multiple platforms. I found her on Twitter, but she doesn't claim to be in there too much. I guess your number one platform is Instagram, right?
I love Instagram a lot. Yeah. Twitter minimalizes what I'm allowed to talk about. And as you can tell, I have plenty to say, so it pisses me off. They only allow so many characters in the thing. And I'm like, well, this sucks. I got a lot to say, man. I do.
I love it when a client says to me, well, it's only, it's only this small thing, so it should be really easy for you.
No, you don't understand. No. I got stuff to say. And I really think language is so important on how we say stuff, you know, so yeah, Twitter is actually really difficult for me to be able to get what I want to say out in such a short little, but yeah, I am on there, and I do support other people on there. But as far as me posting stuff, it's a lot less than I do on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah. And when my website is up, I'll be doing a lot of writing on there. Awesome. Yeah, and a lot of sharing. I have a lot of resources, like anybody, you know, that needs to find a community healing from anything. I mean, I have gathered so many communities and resources for people that are healing from all kinds of stuff, you know. Yeah, it's super important. I may actually, now that my record is clear, I thought about going back to school to do something in the therapy field.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure where that's going to take me, because I don't want to be in school till I'm 80. So like I might find a different avenue, you know, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the works that I'm excited about. So we'll see what happens.
We'll stay on for another minute when we sign off here, but
Okay.
in short, I just want to say, if you enjoyed this episode at all, I highly encourage you to pick up Jen's book. And not just if you're a female. Also, I found, as I said, I found massive value in this as a male, because her message is, I would say I think your audience is directed towards women, but it's really a human experience, and you know, we all come from women, so there's no exclusion in that sense.
Right.
And yeah, we owe you women all of our lives, every last one of us. So that's definitely huge. But Jen, it has been an absolute pleasure to meet you, the first official recovery author on this podcast. So you're going to be first in a great tradition of people who are helping the whole world change this big problem, which ironically, I was thinking during something you said earlier, it's actually, the whole pill epidemic was kind of a blessing. I think when we look back 10 or 20, 30 years from now, I think we might say, thank God that happened, because it really woke up the world to what
it did. For sure.
Anyways, thanks again. It's been awesome to have you on, Jen. And for the listeners, come and check out the show notes. I'll have every last one of the ways you can pester, stalk, and follow Jen on my website. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode.